That's a big ass fish. That's a monster, Mike. Good job.
And that's why we're obviously outdoorsmen. And good morning, everybody. I am Mike. We're obviously outdoorsmen. Welcome to First Light Talk number 26. All right, these FLT talks just keep rolling along. We're already through January. Today is February 1st, 2022. All right, these days are just chugging along and they're not stopping. So these FLTs aren't stopping either. All right, and we're already going to kick it off with another First Light topic. Today's topic is going to be learning how to read a deer's body language, as that can be a make or break point for a hunt. And just like humans, just facial expressions and body language, you can read a lot off of a person without them saying a goddamn word. All right, husbands, if you could just read your woman's body language and you know when she's pissed off, all right, you got to be able to do the same things with a deer, and it's going to help you tremendously in the hunting relationship with your animal as well, not just your wife relationship or girlfriend relationship. All right, you can just tell by facial expressions, body expressions, and just their whole mood, and you can tell the same things with a deer. And whether that be tail wags, perked up ears, the ears being forward or back, they're alert and attentive, or looking over their shoulders, stomping, licking their nose, drooling, panting. All right, we're going to go over what to do in these different scenarios, and basically just to learn when a deer is attentive, alert, and what all these different body language and facial expressions mean on the deer. Because deer are not very vocal animals, and they really don't communicate vocally. They will communicate vocally during certain times, and the little bit of vocal communication that they have is a big indicator, but their body language is 90% of the time going to be what makes or breaks what a deer does and if your hunt's going to be successful or not. So we're going to start off with just simple tail wags, okay? You're out in the woods and you have a deer that you see from your stand, right? The deer's coming in, pops its head up, and it's going to look around, and a tail wag basically just means that it's all good. Like if there's deer behind him, you'll see this a lot of times when there's a herd of deer and the first one coming in is being very alert, very attentive, checking out the area, and she'll stop, or the buck will stop, coming in, stop and look around, wag his tail, all right? The tail wag basically means like, all right, we're good, let's keep moving. It's basically like an army general just coming in and it's like, all right, come on, move forward, or come on, it's all good, keep moving. That's basically what a tail wag means, right? Nothing bad, it's all good. That's what a tail wag means, all right? And that's in the normal scenario. If you shoot a deer and it runs off and you're watching it and it's wagging its tail a million miles an hour, that probably means that you hit that deer good and it's going to go down very quickly if its tail is going insane. All right. Many times when you shoot an animal and it runs out there and it does that just quick tail wag, and I mean quick, it's just back and forth, super quick, like a flag in the wind, just going insane. All right. That deer is mortally wounded and it's going to die pretty quickly. All right. Next, we're going to go to perked up ears, forward versus backwards, and just we're going to focus on the ears for a second. All right, all of the deer's senses are keen to help a deer survive, and they all use them interchangeably on the same notion, the same issue that they're occurring with. So their ears is still another one of their giant advantages on being elusive in the woods. All right, when they're coming through, if they're just moseying on about and they're not really attentive on anything, then you're good. Tail wags, ears, that they're just going. But you see a deer use its ears very effectively, whether they're bedding in one direction. If they're bedding in one direction, like looking down a hill, if they're on a nice vantage point, they're going to be looking down the hill. And whatever way the wind is blowing, that's how they're going to use their alertness from, let's say, the right side. So they're looking down in front of them and to the left of them. And then the wind's blowing from the right over him. So he's checking in front of him with his eyes, and then from his right to his left, he's checking with his nose. But then from behind him, his ears are going to be pointed directly behind him. So he's basically covering all 360 just by all of his senses. And if a deer is alert and its ears are pointed towards you, then please do not move, because he is trying to use all of his senses to find out whether you're a danger or a threat, or if it's all good and he just heard something random, because there's a lot of noises in the woods. Right? If you're a new hunter and you've never been in the woods, right, walk in there at first light and let the woods come alive, and you're gonna be like, wow, these woods are actually pretty loud. Right? And depending on the type of day, whether it's like it just rained or there's the morning dew and the woods are nice and the leaves are soft and they don't make a lot of noise, then you could sneak into your stand quite easily. But on them frosty mornings or them super dry days, the woods are going to be loud. Every step is going to be like crack, crack, ksh, ksh, and it's going to be, you got to take your time, and it's going to be a little harder to get into your stand. It's going to take a little longer as well. So the ears forward, looking at, if they're pointed at you, then you got to be careful not to move or not to make a sound. A lot of times when deer get attentive and they're looking in your direction and their ears are facing behind them, they hear other stuff coming. And they hear stuff behind them, but they probably don't know if it's a squirrel or a rabbit or a person or a coyote or a fox, the whole nine. So their ears, everything kind of works together, but their ears is basically just an indicator for them to like look in that direction. So if they hear something in one direction and it's something they don't like, that's when they pick their head up and they look in the direction. So the ears are pointed in the direction they heard the sound, and then they're trying to confirm it with their sight. And if they can't confirm it with their sight, that's when the nose comes into play. And the nose of a deer will make or break many people's hunts. The nose is what seals the deal on whether the deer spooks and snorts at you, or if it stays calm and it gives you the all clear with a tail wag. If a deer is alert and it's looking at something or looking at you and it's staring at you, the ears are going, and he's licking his nose, and then he basically just settles down and gives an old tail wag, you know you basically just tricked them. But that doesn't give you enough time to just, okay, it's time to start moving again. You got to be careful, because he still knows something's a little off, but he thinks it's all okay. So just watch the ears, but the main thing you got to worry about is your nose. But let's talk about deer being alert, because deer being alert and just chilling, two completely different things. So when a deer is coming in, and a lot of times they're not just steady alert. They're not just staring the whole time. Let's say you're baiting, and the deer are coming into your corn pile, and they're eating, and then you make a little move in your stand or your blind, and they pick their head up and they're staring at you. If they're staring at you and they're just chewing along, and their ears are pointed at you, and they're just standing there, they know something's weird, but they're going to keep eating. If they're just still munching away and they keep going back down to the corn, getting more food and looking up at you, they know something's off, but they're calm about it. But if they're there and they just stop eating and they stop moving their mouth and they're just staring at you, and I'm talking about just like the 1,000-yard stare where they're staring through your soul and they're not chewing, they're not doing anything, and you see their eyes just expand and everything is just like tense, all right? You messed up in some type of way, and you better be still. You better hope that wind is on your side and the wind doesn't blow over you into that deer's face, because then you're getting busted. And just don't move a single muscle, because that deer is alert and attentive. There's a lot of times when I'm in the woods and there'll be a group of doe on the pile, like out in front of me, on my bait pile. And I'm stone cold up in that tree stand, not moving a muscle, just waiting to see if a buck will come through. And then I could basically read what's going on in the rest of the woods by staring at the herd of deer down below me. Because let's say there's 5 deer down there. That's 10 eyes that are just there and very observant. That's 10 eyes, 10 ears, 5 noses, right? They're very alert and they're very effective. So a lot of times if something goes on that I can't hear but the deer could hear, or if the deer could smell, and I see all the deer on the pile get alert and attentive, and they all pick their head ups, they're all tense, and they're looking like away from me or behind me or to the right of me, then I'm like, okay, then what's coming? And then a lot of times they'll be okay if they know it's another deer. If the wind blows from that scent over to them and they wag their tail, but they're alert. They're still trying to see what deer it is that's over there. And then if I just watch them deer, I'm like, okay, something else is coming. And then here comes a buck, and a lot of times they'll either just stay there and just be like, okay, it's buck number 3. That's what buck it is. That's what buck's coming in. But sometimes they'll all run off, or they're just move on off. And I'm like, well, why'd they move? And there's no reason for them to spook. And then here comes this buck. Or if there's a fox coming through and they get alert and attentive, then a fox comes through and they spooks them on off. But you can basically read a lot just by staring at deer, even if they're not spooking at you. Right? If they're looking over their shoulder, then obviously they hear something from behind them, and they're so aware of their surroundings because that's how they need to survive. So whenever they hear something just anywhere in the woods, you best believe they probably know it's there. If they're making noise, if there's a hard scent, and as long as it's not at you, then you're probably in a good standing with that deer at the moment. All right, let's move on to deer stomping, right? Because this is a big one. If you are just out there and the deer is staring at you, it's alert, it's attentive, and it's basically just staring into your soul, and that deer starts stomping, that's a red flag for you right away. All right, if the deer's stomping, it's not a good thing. So there's a couple things that stomping could mean. So if they're just staring in a direction and they're trying to stomp, first off, they're trying to find out if you're a threat or not. So if they're staring at something, and a lot of times I've seen deer stomp, not even at me, but just at objects in the woods or certain animals they don't know. Like sometimes a stray cat will come walking through the woods and the deer will get all perked up and they all don't like it. And they're all freaking out and they start stomping at it. And they're like, what the heck is that thing? And it ends up being a cat, but they don't like it. But if they're staring at you and they're trying to stomp it, you're not busted yet, right? A lot of times when I'm just like spotting and stalking and I'm not in a tree stand or I'm not in a blind, but it applies for all three. If you're spotting and stalking and you're going through and a deer's standing there staring at you, just staring at you, call it a little bit of your movement, and it just doesn't like what she's seeing. She will get all alert, get all attentive. She starts licking her nose, trying to capture as much of the scent as she could possibly can to figure out what you are, if you are a threat or if you are not a danger. So it starts moving back and forth trying to figure out, and then it'll stay still and it starts stomping at you. Like really hard stomps against the ground, just like doosh, 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 just stomping at you. And it's not so much like, it's not an aggression thing, first off. And the only thing the stomp is doing, it's trying to get you to move. That's what it's trying to do. It's trying to see if her eyes are messing with her. And if she stomps, she's trying to get you to move. So to see what you actually are, instead of just staying still. So when she's stomping, a lot of times I just close my eyes, or I just stay stone cold still and I stare back into her soul. That's what I do. And Rob always makes the joke, before I kill an animal, I have to stare into its soul before I just let an arrow rip. I don't know why. It's just a lot of times they stand there, they stare at me, and then they go back to their business, and it basically just tricked the deer, and I just successfully got to like the final 5% to where I gotta shoot. But if they're stomping at you, just don't move. Don't move a single muscle. That's what it's trying to do. It's just trying to get you to move to see what you are. A lot of times when we're in the tree stand and we're trying to like fumble around in the tree, trying to just get everything ready, and a deer comes in and it's just a doe, and we're still trying to like just maybe just glass behind them, see if a buck's coming, and the doe catches us moving and it stares at us and it starts freaking out and it starts stomping at us. Just be stone cold still until the deer gets back to normal and it basically says everything's safe. A lot of times stomping is just trying to get you to move so it can clarify for himself what you are and if you're a threat or not a threat. Right? If you ever see a deer licking its nose while being attentive, a lot of times, a lot of these behaviors will go together in one. So if they're attentive and their ears are perked forward and they're stomping, they're also licking their nose. Right? A lot of times these behaviors go together. What it basically means when the deer is licking their nose, They are just trying to enhance their scent because just like with a dog, their nose are always wet. Their nose is always wet. And that basically just like enhances their ability to smell. It's capturing all the scent in the air. If you ever seen a dog around food, like while you're cooking dinner and the dog's sitting there licking its nose back and forth, panting, right? It smells good to them and they're just trying to get a better scent in the air. That's the same thing with a deer it's doing. So it's standing there, it's looking at you, ears are perked forward, all tensed up, staring at you, stomping. It's also licking its nose because it's just using all of its own senses to, again, see if you're a safety or there's a possibility it could harm it. And we're hunters and we're trying to harvest the animal. So obviously they're trying to be attentive and learn and just try and be safe for themselves. But we got to fool them and all of their senses, and it's hard a lot of the times. So anytime you see a deer get tensed up, you know something is wrong, whether the wind changed or it caught you moving or just you're silhouetted and it sees the image of a human, it just doesn't like it. So if a deer is drooling or panting, well, first off, it could be sick, and that's a big one if a deer is drooling or panting. Or two, if it's the time during the rut or early season, it may just be super hot for them and they're just running around and they're hot first off. But if it's the rut, then they've probably just been chasing like crazy and they're just running themselves to exhaustion. That's what they're doing, drooling or panting. And when they're drooling or panting, especially during the rut, that deer's does not really have its mind on safety. That deer is like trying to get laid, and that's about it. It's trying to find a hot doe, and that's it. So drooling or panting, that's when you know that you can get away with a lot more stuff. You can start rattling, grunting at them, and get really aggressive and not be able to spook that deer because the only thing one track mind, tunnel vision, is on a hot doe. That's all it cares about. So a deer that gets all tensed up. Let's talk about bucks right here because this is where it only applies to bucks. Deer gets all tensed up in the woods, whether you just made a calling sequence towards them, you rattled, you grunted, you snort wheezed, you did a bleat, and you're watching a buck, and it basically like gains 20% of its body size just by like all of its hair standing straight up, and it gets all fluffed up and gets pissed off. All right, he's gonna come in to your calling sequence, or if there's another buck in the area, that deer's looking to fight. If you see a deer with its hairs all stand up and his ears go back and he basically tilts its head down until like the left or right side just tilts its head and it's walking slow but like dominantly, you know, it's looking for a fight. And if there's another buck in the area, it's going to fight him, and whether it's going to be a long fight or if it just pushes the other deer off, it depends on the situation. But if they get all tensed up and their ears go back, the ears going back almost always resembles some type of fight, whether it be does in the winter fighting each other over food and just hoofing each other, just hitting each other with their legs, or bucks that their ears go back and they get all puffed up. They're looking for a fight. But what to do in these different scenarios, each scenario is unique, but a lot of times you can use all the same tactics. And a lot of times if a deer is attentive at you and its nose is going, its eyes are staring through your soul, its ears are perked at you, and it's just standing straight up stomping at you, a lot of times if you just stay stone cold still, then you basically beat them. And as long as the wind is on your side, that's basically all you got to do. With all these different body language things that the deer does, all right, as long as you just stay still when they're alert at you, then you're probably good. Because a deer doesn't look for a human in the woods, right? It looks for movement. And if you're just walking through the woods and you stop and a deer looks up, sees no movement, goes back down, and you start moving again, then that's all you really have to do. But if a deer catches you moving and it starts getting alert, and it doesn't know what it just saw, whether it be a hawk flying through the woods, a fox moving, a squirrel chasing another squirrel, because, you know, these squirrels can be loud as hell out in the woods, and a lot of times we think they're deer. But As long as you just don't move, it really doesn't even matter what kind of camo you're wearing. It does not matter at all. They only see certain shades of blues, greens, and there's a couple other colors, but I have to do my research and check back in on that one. But you can be wearing a Santa outfit in the woods, and as long as you don't move, then you're solid. That's all they look for is movement. And you just play your cards right and move when the deer's not looking or behind a tree, and you're basically just solid on that aspect. And if there's a group of doe, a lot of times the young fawns aren't a threat to you busting and ruining your hunt, but sometimes they are the whistleblowers to where they will just snort at any little movement that you make, and they might blow the hunt for you. But a lot of times when there's like 7 doe on my pile in front of me, or just that I'm trying to stalk up to get a shot at, the fawns will catch me just because that's a lot of set of eyes. 7 deer, that's a lot of eyes just out and about trying to just be safe for themselves. But a lot of times the fawns will bust me, and when I say bust me, they stare at me and they clearly see me moving. But they really don't know what they're looking at because they're new to it, and they just go back to feeding, but they just stare at you. But you have to watch out for the more adult does or the boss doe in that herd, because that's the one that's going to ruin your hunt. That's the one that's going to signal the alarm and just bust out of there if it catches you move. So you just got to watch out for that. Figure out what deer are going to be the ones that are going to ruin your hunt and not ruin your hunt. For example, with Rob's 6-pointer, his second buck ever from last year or 2 years ago, we had a doe and 2 fawns on the pile, and we had a buck coming in from out behind him. And the big doe was on the pile feeding, and the 2 fawns were eating like little berries off the bush like 10 yards in front of us. And when the buck came in, it basically pushed the lead doe out into the thicket, and we were trying to be able to get on the 6-pointer for a shot before it started following that doe and out and away from the corn pile. And when we went to do a big move, these little fawns were just staring at us. But that buck was in tune with that doe, trying to see if she was hot, and I think she was hot at the time. But when we went to get the move to get onto that 6-pointer before he busted out of there to follow that hot doe, the fawns were staring right at us. And in the video, you can hear me whisper to Rob, I'm like, yo, the fawns don't matter, just get on that buck. All right, just get on that buck and make your shot quick. And Rob moves from right to left in one swift motion to draw back, and these fawns are staring at him, and they just go back to chewing on the berries, chewing on the branches, wagging their tails. They don't know what they're looking at. They're new to the woods, and they probably know something's off, but they really don't know what. And as long as their mother doe isn't alerting or being weird about it, then they're probably going to be good. Because their first year, they're trying to learn every single thing they possibly could from their mother. And a lot of times, this is just a little side note, if you ever heard of doe in the area, and let's just say there's 5, 6, 7, 8 doe to one herd, and they're always together, and normally there will always be one boss doe, the oldest doe that has been around the longest, and she's gonna be the one that's probably the bitch of the group, to where she's the most alert. She's the quickest to snort at you and ruin the hunt. She looks up in the trees, looking for your tree stands. She's been around the block. She knows all the tricks. So she knows hunters hang out in the trees, and she knows the platforms. She knows the tree stands. And normally when there's a bait pile and they're that old and they could associate corn with hunters, they get to the corn and they look immediately straight up. And we've had this issue one time, not one time, but this one specific doe. Every time she comes in, she stares straight up, and I mean straight above her, looking for tree stands, looking to check the stands to see if someone's in the stand. And they once they get that old, they pick up a lot of tricks. They're not stupid animals, especially when they get that old. They're not stupid animals, and they know the outline of a human. They know to associate corn with tree stands and hunters, and when they have fawns. And these fawns are basically just watching their mother to pick up on all of the tips and tricks that she does to stay safe in the woods. So if she's looking up in the trees, then the fawns are going to be alert and attentive and looking around. If she's looking straight up, eventually these fawns are going to be looking straight up, especially if it happens and the ball stow busts you in the tree stand and these fawns catch on to that, they're going to be doing the exact same thing. So another thing with the ball stow, if you shoot the ball stow and you have a 8 deer herd and you shoot that ball stow, I guarantee you the movements of that herd will be different for the next 1, 2, 3 years, because all of the deer in that herd basically everything they did were taught from that lead doe, and they basically led them deer around the woods. And all the trails and everything else, they may change if you shoot that lead doe, because the other deer aren't going to know what to do. So the heavy trails may turn into a different trail, like 50 yards to the left or right, or just whatever else. The movements that the does always did are going to be changed if you shoot that lead doe, especially if the fawn's in the group. They're not going to know what to do, so they're just going to be going wherever they please and just getting to A to B. They don't care where they go, while the lead boss old doe is going to sneak around and go the best possible route for every vantage point and every wind advantage they could get and every sight advantage and hearing advantage. They're not stupid animals, so they know what to do. So just watch shooting that lead doe. A lot of times I will take out like the 2, 3-year-old does versus that 5, 6, 7-year-old doe before I do that. So that's basically the intro to reading a deer's body language. And a lot of times if you just learn and you're just in the woods through experience, you're going to pick up on a lot of little things like, okay, that deer's staring at me, or that deer's alert, that deer's attentive, it's going to snort at me, it's licking its nose. You're just trying to fool everything on the animal so it stays calm and it doesn't bust you and figures out you're a human or a threat. So that's essentially it. Thank you for listening to First Light Talk number 26 of the Obviously Outdoorsmen podcast. Right, we have a couple a little bit of news coming up for the next First Light Talks and a couple videos I have in store for you guys. I am trying to start a new series, The Quest for a 10-pound bass. It's probably going to start out as a quest to break my PB, my personal best bass down here in Florida for the time being. But the quest of getting a 10-pound bass, I'm probably going to do a lot of swim bait fishing, right? In the future of the couple next FLT talks, there's probably going to be a swim bait talk as well. Soon there will be the shed hunting Bible talk and video. That one's probably going to be a whole video, not just a podcast format, but I will record it so I can post it on audio platforms solely alone. I'm going to go very in-depth. Instead of doing like a 5-tip sequence of finding more sheds or why you suck at shed hunting type thing, I'm going to go in depth on every little aspect and tip and tactic that I have picked up over the many years that I have been shed hunting, and basically just do a whole in-depth tutorial on finding as many sheds as possible, finding all the sheds in your woods, not to leave a tine behind. We got a bunch of videos in store. We're going to go over a lot of different topics and basically just continuing these First Light daily talks. And that's really it, guys. If you are new to the First Light Talks and the Obviously Outdoorsmen podcast and the Obviously Outdoorsmen channel, we are a group of people that just are insane for the outdoors. All right, we are in the woods or on the water every single chance we get. And we're just out there grinding as much as we possibly can. It's our passion. It's not really a hobby anymore. We can't sleep or eat or just go about our daily lives without thinking about some form of the outdoors, whether it be fishing or hunting. So if you guys are new, please check out all of our social medias: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, the whole nine, the works. Just head over there. Just check out our social medias. Follow us. Don't follow us. Check them out. It's up to you. We are most active on Instagram. That's where we're posting a lot. All right, both of our personal TikTok accounts, mine and Rob's, you can find them up there. And we are posting pretty regularly there as well. But for all the video content that is always coming out, follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us. You can always unsubscribe later, but I'd appreciate if you just subscribe, turn on the little bell. Same thing with Spotify, Anchor, the audio platforms. Just turn on the little bell and follow us to be notified every single time we post, and especially with the first light talks of the Obviously Outdoorsmen podcast. Just follow us to be notified every single time the new first light talk is released. But that is it, guys. Enjoy your day. And again, like usual, hit the damn gym. I'm off to the gym now. It's chest day today. It's probably going to be chest, tries, and shoulders. I'm just going to wreck my muscles today and grind them and tear them to rebuild. So get in the gym and work something out. I don't care if you're starting for the first time today and you're just hitting the treadmill for 20 minutes or 15 or a half hour, an hour. All right, just start somewhere, get into the gym, and then just start bettering yourself, and the rest will come. All right, guys, thank you for listening to FLT number 26. Have a great day. I am Mike. Peace.